I flew overseas on Valentine's Day, planning to surprise my fiancé, Julian, who was studying abroad. When I reached his off-campus loft, I discovered he was rooming together with a female classmate. They did grocery runs together, raised a golden retriever together. Compared to me, they looked more like an engaged couple. I flew back home that same day, froze the cards in his name, and repossessed the keys to the townhouse I'd given his parents. I'd been tolerating them for far too long. I spotted Julian just as I pulled up to his building. A girl was walking beside him. They were laughing. Julian carried a trader tote in each hand. Only when they reached the door did they notice me. Julian froze for a few seconds, and when he finally reacted there wasn't a trace of surprise. Instead, he subtly widened the gap between himself and the girl, then asked, stunned, "Victoria? What are you doing here?" I lifted my phone. "Grandfather sent me to nurture our relationship." The girl beside him kept staring, curiosity spilling over until she blurted, "You are?" I looked her up and down and answered, "I'm Julian's fiancé." She blinked, then offered a shy smile, as pristine as a lotus just breaking the surface. "Senior actually has a fiancé." She playfully punched his arm. "Why didn't you ever mention it? And your fiancé is this gorgeous, so unfair." Before she could finish, Julian frowned at me. "Which hotel are you staying at? It's hard to get a cab here at night." I laughed out loud. "I believe this loft has 2 bedrooms, one my assistant found for you. Am I not allowed to stay? I don't mind calling the landlord for an extra key." I dragged my suitcase into the freight elevator. Julian and the girl followed in silence. Upstairs, she unlocked the door with her own key. I rolled my luggage straight in and sat down on the sitting room sofa, scrutinizing them. I didn't get to ask outside, "Who are you, miss, and why do you have access to my fiancé's place?" Julian jumped in. Before she could answer, "She's Chloe, a junior from my department. She was bullied in the dorms and had nowhere to go. We're both from back home, so I let her crash. There's a spare room anyway." People really do laugh when speechless. That was me, right then. "Oh, so the 2 of you are playing house?" Chloe still hovered in Newport, hastily shaking her head. "No, Sterling, I'm only imposing on Senior for a bit. Rent overseas is insane, and as a girl I was scared to live alone at first." I glanced at the designer tote dangling from her arm and lifted my chin. That bag could cover 6 months of rent. Her delicate face flushed scarlet, voice trembling. I'll start apartment hunting tomorrow and move the moment I find something. Please don't be angry, Sterling." Julian finally snapped. "Victoria, don't be so paranoid." It was the first time he'd ever raised his voice at me. Raised to be the perfect gentleman, made even gentler by art school, he rarely lost his temper. I sneered. "Paranoid? Julian, you're the one rooming with a girl while your fiancé knows nothing about it. Do you want Chloe labeled the other woman, or me mistaken for one?" He had no comeback. I rolled my eyes. "Whatever, it's late." I turned to Chloe. "I'm reasonable. Since you 2 are only schoolmates helping each other, please stick to your word and move out ASAP." I hauled my suitcase into Julian's bedroom. He could take the couch. I showered in Newport, then opened the bedroom door to find both of them in the open kitchen. The petite girl lifted a morsel from the wok with chopsticks and fed it to the guy slicing vegetables beside her. "Chloe, Senior, is it better this time?" Julian, improving." "Chloe, your coaching is awesome. Does it taste like home?" Leaning against the doorframe, I watched. They wore matching aprons, inches apart, their gazes so sticky you could spin silk from them. Ahem. At the sound they sprang apart, faces scarlet. "Cute, staging forbidden romance under my nose. A toad crawling across your foot doesn't bite, just nauseates." "Julian, we're FaceTiming grandfather later. He heads into bypass surgery tomorrow." I'd worked non-stop for 3 months just to reach France before his operation. The surgeon said the success rate was low. Any final wishes should be granted first. I knew grandfather was using illness to pressure me into marriage ASAP. No matter how brilliantly I'd steered Sterling upward, to him a woman could never inherit. He wanted an easily controlled, respectable grandson-in-law, and Julian was his top pick. Grandfather kept repeating, "Give birth to a boy who takes the Sterling name, and my son would count as the true heir." The original plan was to grab a local marriage certificate while overseas and text him the photos. But seeing Julian now, filing paperwork would only disgust me. After dinner we retreated to his bedroom to talk. "Julian, deal with your Chloe problem. I don't want hiccups during the call with grandfather." That conversation would decide whether I could fully seize the board. Winston's shares were mine for the taking. "Victoria, what do you mean, my Chloe problem? There's nothing between Chloe and me, don't twist things." His tone had softened considerably since my arrival. Men are born actors. I ignored him and went on, by the way, I've secured the antique painting you've always wanted. And I have the invitation to the private Chris exhibition next week. For art students like him, meeting Chris is a once-in-a-lifetime shot. Once Chris endorses you, becoming an international art star is only a matter of minutes. These were the conditions I'd given him in exchange for helping me placate grandfather. Alright, when do we FaceTime? Right now. The transatlantic call lasted 30 minutes. On the other end, Winston already looked prepped for bypass surgery. The moment we hung up, Julian still didn't remove the arm he'd draped around my shoulders. I skimmed the share transfer document. T.S. Winston had sent me while shrugging lightly out of his embrace. He only held me tighter. Victoria, the fact that you flew here, it actually makes me happy. Julian lowered his chin to my shoulder, brushing the tip of his nose against my neck. If he'd done this before he left for France, I might have felt a flutter. After all, we'd grown up together. He'd always been the best-looking boy around, and I'd been the only girl in his orbit. He'd simply never shown much warmth. Now, for reasons unknown, he wanted to take us further. Had I not seen him blush at Chloe, I might have settled. But as things stood, if he could create this kind of mess before the wedding, he clearly wasn't very smart. I ushered him out of the master suite with zero expression. I hadn't properly rested since landing. He wasn't ruining my sleep. Early the next morning, barking woke me. I rubbed my eyes and opened the bedroom door. Chloe stood there in athleisure, a golden retriever at her side. I hadn't realized there was a dog in the loft yesterday. Good morning, Sterling. I'm taking Ian for a jog. At noon I'll go apartment hunting. She greeted me brightly, as though yesterday's awkwardness had evaporated. She snapped the leash onto the retriever. Good boy, Ian. Let's go run with mommy. Then she yelled toward the open kitchen, Senior, it's the weekend, don't forget Ian's canned food. Come on, Ian, wave bye to daddy. She lifted the dog's paw toward Julian, then bounced out the door, girl and dog. Well. Finally met a pedigree green tea specimen up close. Julian never answered, he only gave me an embarrassed smile. At noon he took me to a bistro. We'd just sat down when we ran into a couple, both his classmates from France. The French guy greeted him in French, Julian, you're actually on a date. Chloe posted on TikTok that she's looking for a new place, are you two fighting? Julian frowned and denied it. But the guy, apparently defending Chloe, pressed on, so the BEA. Beautiful woman you're dining with, she's your pursuer? Doesn't she know you and Chloe are the real couple? The French girl chimed in, also in French, hitting on someone when you have a girlfriend, classic homewrecker. Julian finally spoke, in French, it's not what you think. It's complicated, just drop it. He answered vaguely, never straight up. I care about face, homewrecker? Cute. Are Julian and Chloe a couple at school? I asked the guy directly, in French. Why yes. All three gaped, they hadn't expected me to speak the language. I'm Julian's fiancé. We've already had our engagement ceremony. If anyone's the homewrecker, it's your classmate Chloe. I stood, picked up my crystal flute, and threw the Bordeaux straight into Julian's face. Julian, I've never been insulted like this. The Sterling family can live without you as a son-in-law. Too drenched to care about dignity, Julian hurried to explain my identity to his friends. I suddenly realized I no longer recognized him. I hadn't loved him to death, but I had genuinely liked him. I'd always pictured him as my future husband. These 2 days of contact, though, had shaken that certainty. I lost my appetite, got up, and left the bistro. Raised under family influence, I'd unconsciously assumed I would marry Julian. Neither of us had rebellious natures, dynastic marriages are routine in our circle. But now he'd crossed my baseline. I'd heard how Charles ditched his fiancée for a starlet, turning Madeline into a laughingstock. The Meng stock nosedived and still hasn't recovered. Economics calls it risk aversion. My sunk costs in this relationship are large, but reassessing future risk versus reward, the numbers no longer add up. I can easily pick a safer candidate. I've just seized control of Sterling, nothing can go wrong right now. Julian and I weren't even technically a dynastic match, only because Julian's late grandmother had been Winston's great love. In his youth Winston was a playboy, she left him for an ordinary teacher. When she died, Winston was eaten by regret, so he funneled compensation toward her descendants. Julian's features echo hers, down to the artistic talent. So although the Vances are merely dual income, Winston granted them maximum face and called it a strategic alliance. I'd planned to pack and move to a hotel. But after months of overwork, the sudden slack and mild jet lag made me dizzy. I lay down in the master suite for a moment, only to black out until dusk. Footsteps and voices drifted in from Newport. Then Julian opened the bedroom door. Victoria, I spent the afternoon hunting places with Chloe, no luck yet. Victoria? I pushed myself up. Do you have any fever meds? I must be running a fever. Before he could answer, a shriek came from the sitting room. Chloe had slammed her hand in the door. Julian didn't hesitate, he bolted out. After a flurry of doors opening and slamming, the loft fell silent. I faintly heard Chloe sob that she might never play piano again and had to get to the hospital. I called weakly twice. Sure enough, they were gone. Usually a fever like this just needs a pill and a good night's sleep. But I didn't even have the strength to get out of bed, let alone go buy medicine. I didn't want to bother anyone else. Yet, alone in a foreign country, the only person I could turn to besides Julian was a business partner. The partner's secretary took my call and immediately called an ambulance, rushing me to Sterling. The doctor said if I'd arrived any later, it would have turned into pneumonia. I stayed in the clinic for 2 days. During that time Julian called only once, but I was in radiology and missed it. On the afternoon of the 3rd day I was discharged. The partner sent a car to drive me back to the loft. That evening Julian and I were supposed to attend Christopher's private exhibition. I had promised him one of the invitations. But I decided to take the other ticket and go alone. Christopher is a friend of mine, IH. I'd also come to see her. I just never expected that, once I returned to Julian's loft, I would find neither Julian nor his junior, nor either of the invitations. In the master suite my suitcase had been opened and its contents tossed everywhere. If my laptop hadn't still been sitting safely on the desk, I would have sworn the place had been robbed. I dialed Christopher straight away. After the usual pleasantries I told him both of my invitations had been stolen. If anyone tried to use them, he should have security call the police. The invites were personalized and numbered. It would take one glance to see who was using my name. Christopher was furious and texted me the live feed from the exhibition gate. Sure enough, there were Julian and Chloe. Rain was still falling. When the guards threw them out I nearly laughed myself sick. Both were in white gowns, and on the monitor they looked filthier than strays as they scrambled up from the pavement. Then the perfect couple was escorted away in a squad car. I've weathered Sterling boardrooms for years, I'm no saint. With Christopher's permission I uploaded the surveillance clip to Ivy Confessions. I also posted an anonymous thread, engaged man cheats with classmate, drama inside. I'm sure their campus life will be exhilarating from now on. After visiting Christopher I flew back home. Winston's bypass hadn't gone well. Post-op he was moved to ICU and never regained consciousness. The moment my plane touched down Richard called. A few hours earlier Winston had flatlined. I felt absolutely nothing. Only relief. All his life Winston had wanted a grandson, a male heir. But the more you crave something, the more the universe denies it. In his youth he'd chased every skirt. My grandmother, his dynastic bride, was no pushover. After giving birth to Richard she had disposed of mistresses, would-be mistresses, and any unborn claimants. Finally she dragged him to the clinic for a vasectomy. Richard, the romantic, adored my mother. She died giving birth to me, his only child. After her death Winston tried repeatedly to send me away, claiming my presence kept Richard from forgetting her. He ordered Richard to remarry quickly, he wanted that grandson. But Richard had inherited grandmother's ruthlessness, he booked himself in for a vasectomy, too. Thus my generation of the Sterlings consists of me alone. With no alternative, Winston fetched me back from the boarding school. Until I displayed a talent for business he regarded me as nothing more than a womb for a future great-grandson. Because Richard refused to helm Sterling, I clawed through college, netting the company hundreds of millions. Only then did Winston concede I was a Sterling in my own right. The day after his funeral I received the private investigator's report. Julian and Chloe had ended up in the same bed after too many drinks. Probably Chloe, sensing the walls closing in, set the trap, though Julian was hardly unwilling. They assumed that, abroad, even a ruined reputation wouldn't follow them once they collected their diplomas and came home. Break the engagement? Your grandfather just died and this is how you treat our family? Eloise was as shrill as ever. Look at you, pushing 30. Without the Vance name who would ever want you? I signaled my assistant to hand Eloise and prof the annulment contract. Beside it I placed the bride price trinkets the Vances had presented at our engagement. Calling them trinkets is generous, a box of gold-plated costume jewelry. Back then Winston had courted the alliance, refusing any bride price, telling them to gift whatever was convenient. So I received a carton of fake gold. Vance, please sign. Both families' gifts will be returned per the original list, my assistant explained. Victoria, who do you think you are? You imagine the Vance family fears you? The betrothal your grandfather arranged isn't something you can tear up on a whim. Eloise snatched the papers and shredded them. I lifted a finger. My assistant produced a second set. Evidence of Julian's infidelity, intimate photos, text threads, hotel key logs, and the disciplinary notice the university issued after the scandal. This proves Julian is unfit to remain engaged to our CEO. Eloise's face flushed puce, yet she kept spitting venom. So he has a confidant. What of it? Women throw themselves at him. That only shows my son's worth. Prof, usually the courteous academic, dropped the patriarch mask and mumbled, "It's a misunderstanding. That woman seduced him." My assistant gave a cool smile. Sterling prefers an amicable resolution, no public washing of dirty linen. Should the Vance family decline, we're prepared to let the courts decide. Eloise hesitated a few seconds, then rallied, "You dare disrespect your elders? Where's your breeding?" I crossed my legs, reclined on the sofa, lips curved in a smile that held zero warmth. I said nothing, just let them suffocate on their own rage. This is the only time I'll negotiate with you two in such a civil tone. If you insist on refusing, then wait for the subpoena. Victoria's assistant glanced at her watch, irritation flicking across her face. Don't, Prof stepped in, voice cracking. He prized his reputation above everything. A public trial would shred the dignified image he'd spent decades curating at the university. Ignoring Eloise's shrieking protests, he scrawled his signature on the fresh annulment contract. My mother named me Victoria, hoping I'd guard the innocence of childhood forever, growing sturdy and straight like a noble sapling. Instead, they clamped iron shackles of some preference around my limbs before I could even spell my own name. Trees aren't supposed to live as daughter vines, and I finally feel the ground steady under my own roots. I left the rest to the lawyers and the assistant. Cards for Prof, Eloise, and Julian, still off in France, were frozen on the spot, every VIP privilege revoked. With a security detail backing me, I took back the Newport they'd squatted in for years. For 2 decades they'd mistaken sterling generosity for birthright, which is why they'd signed so quickly. Stupid of them, but it saved me paperwork. Julian flew back home. Rumor had it he hawked half his designer closet just to buy the ticket. Sterling, Julian's at the main gate and he's, what's he doing? He's kneeling, both knees, clutching this giant bouquet. Total psychopath move. My assistant rolled her eyes so hard I felt the gust through the phone. Send security. If he won't leave, call the cops. I still had a tower of contracts to sign. Fictional CEOs spend their days entwined in torrid affairs. Real ones are 24-hour spreadsheets. Fortunately, the overtime pays, tee-hee. I stopped thinking about Julian or the Vances at all. Honestly, without grandfather's youthful fling with Julian's grandmother, some tale of a silver spoon heir and a penniless daisy, his family would never have sniffed our stratum. Yet the universe keeps dispatching gnats to pester me. I swung by Richard's townhouse to pick up a file and found Julian perched in the sitting room. Margaret, ever the picture of maternal warmth, was chatting him up. Yes, even though Richard loved my mother to the grave, he couldn't endure bodily solitude. To keep some gold digger from harvesting his DNA and growing me a test tube brother overseas, I'd handpicked a stainless steel second wife. Sweetie, you're finally here. We've been waiting. She clasped my hand, syrupy affection dripping from every syllable. Julian came especially to explain everything to you. Little spats between lovebirds fade overnight. He told me it's all a misunderstanding, just an ordinary classmate. Darling, men attract bees when they're brilliant. You can't use our family power to squash him every time the wind rattles a petal. I tugged free. Margaret, unless you know the facts, keep your commentary to yourself. I can always shop around for a stepmother who minds her own business. Margaret's cheeks blanched, she lowered her gaze and shut up. Julian, still planted on the sofa, lifted his head. Victoria, I know I messed up. Could I have one more chance? I rolled my eyes so far I saw my own brain. Chance? I served you a full 20-year buffet of chances. Plenty of suitors come contract ready. Swapping in a man who respects the word fiancé beats bankrolling an emotionally incontinent lightweight. Forget tragic Whiteman-Hart melodrama, nipped in the bud. Julian's face drained, his lips parted, but nothing came out. I headed for Newport. Victoria, he shouted suddenly. I only fought the engagement because our elders arranged it. I kept you at arm's length to deny them. I surrender now. His eyes reddened, voice cracking. I don't want to lose you. I regret everything. Oh. Get therapy. I slammed the Newport door and texted the house guards to sweep out the riffraff. Months slid by in glass calm silence. I thought I'd seen the last of them, until they served me a piping hot turd. Eloise posted a TikTok. She wept on camera, begging her daughter-in-law to forgive her repentant son. Cut to Julian slumped on Newport curb, chugging cheap booze in the rain. Caption: 20+ years of childhood sweetheart love can't just vanish. My son's excellence lures girls. How is that his fault? Julian's good looks plus vintage filter gloom painted the perfect tragic hero. Some rival board member with a death wish leaked crumbs. Gossip aggregators swarmed. Old money heartbreak beats Hollywood contrivance every time. So, OMG, is this what real dynastic romance looks like? I thought soap operas were extra, but life outright's fiction. So even billionaire heiresses get jealous and dump guys. They're rich enough to dine on heartbreak, lol. In a corner the princess never sees, the hot prince shatters. Quality men don't stay single for long. The aggregators recast me as a spoiled tyrant. A few cloutsy hazing influencers chimed in, isn't the fiancé basically a villainess? Poor guy, bound by elders pact, meets true love but must kneel to the evil heiress. Fiction has nothing on this angst. Netizens soon doxed me. Before the keyboard army could fire, they choked on their own rage. My PR team had wargamed this day. The trending tag, Sterling heiress dumps cheater, rocketed across platforms. Our planted accounts dropped Julian's infidelity dossier with timestamps, plus a tidy spreadsheet of every million the Van Cess had siphoned from Sterling accounts in recent years. Sterling's legal team moved just as fast, vacuuming up every shred of evidence that the sleazebag gossip aggregators and influencer trolls had fabricated, then filing defamation suits against every last one of them. So although the stock dipped for a hot minute, it rocketed back up and even closed higher than before. Once the facts were out, the internet crowned me the living embodiment of a revenge novel. The Vance family's faces were slapped raw, and thousands of regular girls rose up for me. Watching the Van Cess crash, they felt the scars left by their own exes fade a shade. Eloise, furious that I hadn't left her a lifeline, went live on TikTok and just started airing dirty laundry. Who even wants that Sterling brat? My son is brilliant, of course girls chase him. So what if he got a hotel room? They were engaged for years and she never let him touch her. Who's she pretending for? My boy has needs, and if his fiancé won't do her duty, he'll find someone who will. Besides, even if my son steps out, any kid born to another woman will still have to call her mom. In the old days the legal wife begged the concubine to pop the heirs. She should be thrilled she doesn't have to give birth herself. Eloise rattled off her twisted logic, spraying spit at her phone. Between the trending tag and the traffic boost I'd quietly paid for, her room hit 100,000 viewers in minutes. She was mid-R. Or when a duet request popped up, her finger slipped and she accepted. The girl on the split screen looked dewy and sweet. Trying to hit on my son? Not every stray gets through our gate, Eloise sneered, eyeing the girl's clearly off-the-rack outfit. The girl smiled, gentle as silk, then dropped a sentence that froze Eloise and stalled the comment feed for a full heartbeat. Big sis, I'm already carrying Prof's babies. Doctor says boy-girl twins. Don't you think it's my turn to sit in the missus seat? WH, what did you say? I'm pregnant by Professor Vance. He promised he'd divorce you for me. I watched the color drain from Eloise's face and felt a bright, sharp rush of satisfaction. When my PI dug into Julian, he'd stumbled onto the professor's long-running affair with an undergrad. At first she'd wanted help with her thesis, later Prof lured her into staying his secret plaything. He swore he'd file against Eloise this year and make her the new Vance. No need to sweat finals or job hunts. A few months ago the girl used her pregnancy to force his hand, but he kept stalling. I simply planted two aunties beside her at her OB appointment to gossip, loudly, about mistresses who march up to the wife and make her so furious she signs the divorce papers the same day. Turns out Prof has a type, he likes them dumb. The moment the side piece saw Eloise's face on live, she lost what little brain she had and charged straight into the spotlight. The spectators in the TikTok unleashed poison-dipped comments. Seconds ago you said real wives can't wait for concubines to give birth. Smile for the camera, Eloise. Like father, like son, cheating must be genetic. How fascinating. My hubby's so amazing girls chase him, sure. January pink sausage eye roll. GIF Eloise finally snapped, shrieking curses until both feeds died inside 60 seconds. Quite the spectacle. Later my assistant told me Prof landed in ICU, whether from his wife's meltdown, his mistress's ambush, or the sheer shame. Nobody knew. Thanks to the side piece drama, the PR storm around me fizzled out. Tags like Vance Men Cheat and Ivy Prof vs Wronged Wife were set to trend for days, yet by next morning they'd vanished. Scrubbing trends costs triple what it takes to buy them. I wondered where Julian had scraped up that kind of cash. My ever-helpful assistant reappeared with gossip he'd catched from the finance boys. Julian had taken out $1 million shark loan. Between killing the hashtags and Prof's hospital bill he'd burned through several $100,000. And Chloe, remember her, still in France, had announced her own pregnancy and demanded $50,000 for prenatal quiet. Apparently she hadn't realized the Vances were merely upper middle class without my surname attached. That million wasn't a loan you stroll away from, and Prof had already lost his tenure track slot. Surprise, they never planned to pay it back. The second Prof was discharged, the trio did a midnight flit with whatever cash was left. Julian had always romanticized a green card dash, convinced his artistic soul deserved a foreign passport. Under his influence, Eloise decided foreign moons really were rounder. This time they got their wish. Years later, I was stuck at a red light when I spotted a familiar face. Chloe, painted like a sidewalk flyer, was being dragged by the hair out of a Maserati by the owner's wife, who kept screaming homewrecker. Hadn't she been carrying Julian's baby? If she was back, that meant the Vances. Reading my expression, my driver assistant filled in the blanks. Sterling had opened offices in France. During handoffs our local partner loved dropping dime. The Vances had overstayed visa on arrival, so they crammed into a banlieue studio. Within days their last suitcases of cash were gone. When Chloe realized the situation, she tried to break things off. Eloise shoved her, 5-month bump and all, and the baby didn't survive. Chloe never finished her degree and slunk home. Julian T. Read a street portrait hustle, but the euros wouldn't stretch. My assistant paused, face pinched. I nudged him. Spill it. Jefferson says Julian ended up selling himself on OnlyFans. That was an image I didn't need. I told my assistant to stop right there and never track them again. You can't outrun consequences, you can only respect the trajectory. I have money, power, and my freedom now, more than enough to enjoy the life that's actually mine. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.